Welcome to the Battleground Chronicles World War II channel. Subscribe to our channel because every day we publish stories about the valor of American soldiers based on real events. Support us. Like our videos if you like what we do for you. August 7th, 1942, South Pacific, 6:25 hours. The first rays of sunlight pierced the thick tropical mist hanging over the dark, volcanic island. Guadalcanal lies still, breathing with the ancient rhythm of the jungle. The Japanese soldiers stationed at the nearly completed airfield sleep in their barracks, unaware that their world is about to end. Lieutenant Colonel Merritt Edson scans the shoreline through binoculars from the deck of USS Macaulay. The intelligence is fragmentary at best. They don't know exactly how many Japanese occupy the island. 18,000 Marines are about to hit the beaches of an island that most Americans couldn't locate on a map 6 months ago. Now it's become the first major offensive of the United States in the Pacific War. The air is thick with humidity. The men's uniforms are already soaked with sweat. The pungent smell of diesel fuel, gunpowder, and vomit fills the transport ships. Many of the Marines have been seasick for days. Their faces are pale, their eyes sunken. Some pray quietly. Others stare blankly at the approaching coastline. A thin strip of white beach backed by an impenetrable wall of green. "I've never seen anything so beautiful and so terrifying at the same time," whispers Sergeant James Hurlbut of the 5th Marines to his buddy. At 0910, the naval bombardment ceases. An unnatural silence descends for 30 seconds. Then comes the mechanical roar of landing craft engines. The first wave of Marines approaches the shore. None of these men know that they are heading toward what will become known as the Island of Death. What happens on Guadalcanal over the next 6 months will claim over 7,100 American and 31,000 Japanese lives. Malaria, dysentery, jungle rot, starvation, and psychological collapse will claim almost as many victims as enemy bullets. But on this morning, at this moment, all they can think about is getting to shore alive. The horror of Guadalcanal is about to begin. August 7, 1942, Red Beach, Guadalcanal, 0932 hours. Corporal Sidney Phillips of K Company, 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, feels the landing craft scrape against the coral reef. The metal door drops open. No enemy fire greets them, only the relentless equatorial heat. The temperature already hovers near 100 degrees, the humidity close to 90%. "Move, move, move!" shouts Lieutenant Hugh Dupree. Phillips plunges into waist-deep water, his 80 pounds of gear threatening to drag him under. His boots find purchase on the razor-sharp coral. Blood clouds the water around dozens of men as the coral slices through their canvas leggings. The metallic smell of blood mixes with salt water and the rotting vegetation stench from the jungle. They reach the beach and sprint across the blazing white sand toward the tree line. Phillips dives into cover, his heart hammering against his ribcage. Around him, Marines set up machine gun positions and organize perimeters. Colonel William McKelvey's voice carries over the din. "Push inland. The airfield must be secured by nightfall." Inland, the jungle waits. An impenetrable green wall of prehistoric-looking foliage. Giant ferns with leaves bigger than a man. Trees over 100 feet tall, their trunks wrapped with vines as thick as a Marine's arm. The men call it that fucking green hell. The jungle isn't empty. It breathes. It watches. Private Robert Leckie of H Company later wrote, "We entered a green wilderness unlike anything in our experience. The very air seemed alive with invisible threats. Even without the Japanese, this place would kill you if it could." Phillips's unit pushes toward the airfield. The Japanese defenders have fled, leaving behind half-eaten meals. The Marines discover the first of many horror scenes, a coast watcher's head mounted on a spike outside a Japanese command post. According to military records, this was Martin Clemens's native assistant, executed for providing intelligence to the Allies. By 1600 hours, the Americans have secured the airfield, the prized objective. Victory seems swift and easy. Too easy. As night falls, the true nature of Guadalcanal reveals itself. The darkness that descends isn't like darkness anywhere else on Earth. It's absolute, primordial, and it's filled with sounds. Insects screaming in frequencies that set human teeth on edge. Unknown animals calling to each other. And something else. The sound of metal striking metal from the jungle depths. Japanese soldiers communicating by tapping bayonets against helmets. They are out there. Watching. Waiting. That first night, Captain Charles Brush later testified, I realized we weren't fighting just the Japanese. We were fighting the island itself. August 8th, 1942. Guadalcanal. 300 hours. Private Eugene Sledge cannot sleep. No one can. The jungle's nocturnal cacophony is punctuated by random rifle fire as jumpy sentries shoot at shadows. The air is thick with mosquitoes. Already, men scratch madly at welts covering every exposed inch of skin. The medical report from the first 24 hours records 110 cases of heat exhaustion, 31 cases of dysentery, and the first cases of a mysterious fever that will later be identified as dengue. At 3:07, Destroyer Squadron 4 is attacked by Japanese warships in what will become known as the Battle of Savo Island. From their positions on shore, the Marines watch helplessly as the night sky illuminates with the bright flashes of naval gunfire. USS Vincennes, Quincy, Astoria, and the Australian cruiser Canberra are all sunk. Jesus Christ, they're killing our Navy, whispers Corporal James Davis, his face ghostly in the reflected light of the distant battle. By dawn, oil slicks and debris cover the water between Guadalcanal and Savo Island. The smell of burning fuel and flesh carries to shore. Suddenly, the Marines realize they are alone. Admiral Turner has withdrawn all remaining ships. No supplies, no naval support, no evacuation. Marine Colonel Clifton Cates sends a message to headquarters. We have met the enemy and they are ours, for the simple reason that we can't get away from the bastards. The day brings searing heat. The temperature in direct sunlight reaches 120 degrees. Men collapse while digging foxholes. Medical reports document that 13 Marines die of heat stroke this day alone. They bury their dead on what will become known as Skyline Ridge. The hard volcanic soil resists entrenching tools. It takes 4 men nearly an hour to dig each shallow grave. Chaplain Willard's voice breaks as he recites prayers for the dead. According to Sergeant Major David Irvin's diary, the sounds of shovels hitting volcanic rock while digging graves became the heartbeat of Guadalcanal. It never stopped. As the sun sets, the Marines prepare for their second night. Intelligence reports indicate Japanese reinforcements landing on the far side of the island. The Marines now know they are not fighting a retreating enemy, but are instead caught in the opening moves of a campaign that will stretch human endurance to its breaking point. Tojo's got us surrounded, the poor bastard, jokes Private First Class Richard Greer to break the tension. No one laughs. August 12, 1942. Alligator Creek, later renamed Tenaroo River. 2:45 hours. Colonel Kiyonao Ichiki leads 900 elite Japanese soldiers through the dark jungle. According to captured documents, Ichiki has been ordered to exterminate the enemy around the airfield and then secure the airfield. Across the creek bed, 2,500 Marines from the 1st Marine Division wait in prepared positions. They've been warned by Coast Watcher Martin Clemens that the Japanese are coming. Among them is Private Albert Schmid, manning a machine gun position with his friends Johnny Rivers and Lee Diamond. The air is thick with anticipation. Sweat runs down Schmid's face. stinging his eyes. The darkness hums with mosquitoes. Distant thunder rolls over the mountains. Another tropical storm approaching. At 03:10, Japanese soldiers cross the sandbar at the mouth of Alligator Creek. They attack in waves, screaming, "Banzai!" Marine machine guns open fire, illuminating the night with muzzle flashes. "They just kept coming," Schmid later testified. "It was like cutting down corn stalks." Japanese bodies pile up in the creek bed. The water runs red. Still they come, climbing over their dead comrades, throwing grenades, firing rifles. The Marines pour fire into the human wave. A grenade explodes in Schmid's position. Lee Diamond is wounded in the arm, but keeps feeding the ammunition belt. Johnny Rivers is killed instantly. Schmid is blinded in one eye, his face shredded by shrapnel, but he keeps firing. According to the battle report, the Japanese make 5 major assaults across the creek. Each one is repulsed. By dawn, the creek bed is choked with bodies. The few surviving Japanese retreat, carrying their wounded. Colonel Ichiki, dishonored by defeat, commits ritual suicide by shooting himself in the head with his pistol. His adjutant burns his personal flag and his body. These details were confirmed by Japanese prisoners captured later. As the sun rises, the Marines survey the scene. Over 800 Japanese soldiers lie dead. The Marines have lost 44 men. The smell is indescribable. In the tropical heat, decomposition begins almost immediately. Millions of flies descend on the corpses. The buzzing is so loud it drowns out normal conversation. "I've seen dead men before," writes Lieutenant Colonel Frank Getke in his report, "but never like this. Never so many. Never so torn apart." Medical officer Dr. James Vetter records, "Many of the men vomited at the sight and smell. Others just stared. Something changing behind their eyes. Something you couldn't fix with medicine." This is just the beginning. August 20th, 1942. Western Guadalcanal, time unknown. Lieutenant Colonel Frank Getke leads a patrol of 25 Marines into Japanese territory. Intelligence indicates there might be Japanese soldiers willing to surrender. The patrol includes surgeons, interpreters, and intelligence officers. The landing boat beaches at the wrong location, deep in enemy-held territory. As the Marines disembark, Japanese machine guns open fire from concealed positions in the jungle. According to the only survivor, Sergeant Frank Few, what happens next is methodical slaughter. The Marines are pinned on the beach. Getke is killed in the first volley, shot through the head. Captain Ringer, the intelligence officer, dies next. Few crawls through the darkness back to the water. He swims along the coastline until he reaches friendly lines the next morning. His testimony is recorded in the official after-action report. "They killed them all. I could hear the wounded screaming, then single shots as the Japanese executed them. They took their time. The screaming lasted for hours. A rescue force arrives too late. They find the mutilated remains of the patrol. According to the medical examiner's report, many of the bodies show evidence of torture before death. The report details are classified for decades afterward, deemed too disturbing for public knowledge. Marine Corps historian Samuel Griffith writes, "The Getke Patrol became a turning point. Any notion of the possibility of surrender was erased from the minds of the Marines. It became a battle of extermination. Back at the perimeter, news of the patrol's fate spreads. Something changes in the Marines. Fear transforms into cold hatred. Many begin keeping tally marks on their helmets, counting dead Japanese soldiers like game animals." Private Eugene Sledge later wrote, "The fierce struggle for survival on Guadalcanal eroded the veneer of civilization and made savages of us all. We existed in an environment totally incomprehensible to men behind the lines." The rain begins again. It will continue for 3 days without stopping. Men develop fungal infections that eat away at their skin. Medical reports document cases where maggots have to be removed from living tissue. The humidity prevents wounds from healing. The Japanese launch nightly shellings from offshore destroyers. The Marines nickname it the Tokyo Express. Men go days without sleep, jumping at every sound in the jungle. They start to call the island Starvation Island. Supply ships can't get through. The men are down to 2 meals a day, then 1. The ration is cut to 800 calories, 1 can of meat, and 2 biscuits. Malnutrition compounds the effects of tropical diseases. And still, the killing continues. September 12, 1942, Edson's Ridge, Bloody Ridge, 2100 hours. Lieutenant Colonel Merritt Edson's Raiders and the 1st Parachute Battalion, 840 men in total, hold a crucial ridge south of Henderson Field. Intelligence reports indicate the Japanese are massing for a major assault. 3,000 Japanese soldiers under Colonel Akinosuke Oka are moving through the jungle toward the Marine positions. Rain falls steadily. The Marines' foxholes fill with water. The mud is knee-deep in places. Fungal infections have become so common that most men can no longer wear boots. Their feet are too swollen. They fight barefoot, with bandages wrapped around their rotting feet. According to meteorological records, the temperature that night is 89 degrees despite the rain. The humidity is 100%. Nothing dries. Nothing stays clean. At 21:30, star shells illuminate the sky. In their harsh light, the Marines see the Japanese emerging from the jungle below the ridge. Thousands of them. "My God, there's so many," whispers Corporal James Bryan. Major Kenneth Bailey shouts, "This is it! This is what we came for! Give 'em hell!" The Japanese advance up the ridge in waves, screaming battle cries. Marine machine guns cut swaths through their ranks. Artillery from the 11th Marines pours shells into the attackers. The sound is deafening. Private Robert Leckie describes it in his memoir. The night became a nightmarish cyclone of noise, light, and death. Men fired until their weapons jammed from overheating. The Japanese dead piled up so high they formed barricades, behind which their comrades took cover. The Japanese breached the Marine lines in several places. The fighting becomes hand-to-hand. Men stab each other with bayonets and entrenching tools. They strangle each other in the mud. Captain Lew Walt kills a Japanese officer with his bare hands. The official report states simply, Captain Walt encountered the enemy commander in hand-to-hand combat and dispatched him. By 0200, the Marines are running low on ammunition. The line threatens to break. Colonel Edson moves from position to position, rallying his men. "Hold what you've got." A Japanese soldier reaches the command post and throws a grenade. It kills 2 radio men and wounds Edson's adjutant. Sergeant Major Sheffield brings down the attacker with his sidearm. At 0330, the Japanese launch their final assault. It reaches the crest of the ridge before being thrown back. By dawn, the Marines still hold the position. The slopes of the ridge are carpeted with Japanese dead. Over 600 bodies, according to official counts. The Marines have lost 31 killed and 103 wounded, nearly 1/6 of their force. "We should be dead. We all should be dead," Lieutenant Thomas Mullihay writes in his report. "I don't know how we held." This is just one night of the battle for Guadalcanal. There will be many more. September 14, 1942. Henderson Field, 1400 hours. The airstrip is a sea of mud. Marine Corsair fighter planes taxi through brown puddles that hide potholes deep enough to snap landing gear. Major John L. Smith's squadron, the Cactus Air Force, operates from this tenuous position, surrounded by jungle that hides Japanese snipers. According to maintenance logs, the aircraft are in desperate condition. Mechanics cannibalize damaged planes to keep others flying. Bullet holes are patched with metal cut from empty ration cans. There is no replacement for the plexiglass canopies. Pilots fly open cockpit in tropical downpours. At 1423, the radar station, a primitive SCR-270B unit, detects incoming Japanese aircraft, 45 bombers escorted by 30 Zero fighters. The siren wails. Men sprint for foxholes. The corsairs scramble to intercept. Lieutenant William P. Marintate's voice crackles over the radio. "There's so many of them. Christ, they're everywhere." The sky fills with anti-aircraft fire. Black puffs of flak create a deadly maze for both American and Japanese pilots. The roar of aircraft engines and explosions is deafening. Japanese bombs crater the airfield. One direct hit destroys the main fuel dump. Black smoke billows 1,000 feet into the air. The heat is so intense that men 200 yards away suffer first-degree burns. On the ground, Captain Charles Brush watches the aerial battle. It was like a scene from hell. Planes falling in flames, men bailing out, parachutes, some on fire, drifting down into the jungle where no rescue was possible. The official after-action report records 7 Marine aircraft shot down. 5 pilots are killed. Japanese losses are 27 aircraft. The wrecked planes add to the growing airplane graveyard at the edge of the field, what the Marines grimly call the boneyard. That night, as the wounded moan in the crowded medical tents, Japanese destroyers shell the airfield. The men call it Washing Machine Charlie, the constant circling of Japanese aircraft dropping flares and occasional bombs, ensuring no one sleeps. In his medical log, Navy Surgeon Dr. Daniel Willoughby notes, "Sleep deprivation is becoming as serious a problem as combat wounds. Men are hallucinating from exhaustion. I've seen veterans of weeks of combat break down sobbing when a mess tin drops." The official medical report for September 14th lists 17 cases of combat fatigue, severe enough to require evacuation, if evacuation were possible. But it isn't. The men are trapped on the island with their deteriorating minds. By the end of September, Henderson Field's psychiatric casualty rate will reach 16%, higher than any previous American military engagement. The brutal combination of combat stress, malnutrition, disease, and isolation creates what medical officers call the Guadalcanal syndrome, a 1,000-yard stare that never fully goes away. September 27, 1942. Meticulously River, 11 hours. Lieutenant Colonel Lewis B. Chesty Puller leads a patrol of 150 men from the 7th Marines to probe Japanese positions west of the Meticulously River. Intelligence reports indicate increased enemy activity in this sector. What they don't know is that Major General Kiyotake Kawaguchi has landed with 4,000 fresh troops. The humidity is oppressive. According to meteorological records, it hasn't rained for 3 days, unusual for Guadalcanal. The jungle floor is covered with a thick layer of rotting vegetation. Each step releases clouds of mosquitoes and the stench of decay. At 11:17, Japanese machine guns open fire from concealed positions on the opposite bank. The Marines dive for cover. The initial volley kills 7 men instantly. "They've got the whole riverbank zeroed in," shouts Sergeant Thomas Strickland. Puller orders his men to pull back, but they're already being flanked. Japanese soldiers have crossed the river upstream and are moving to cut off their retreat. Captain Regan Fuller's company is surrounded. According to the battle report, Fuller orders his radio man to call for help. "We are surrounded. Situation desperate. Need immediate assistance or extraction." Colonel Puller organizes the remainder of his force to break through to the trapped company. The fighting is savage. The after-action report describes Japanese soldiers hiding in treetops, firing down on the Marines. Snipers tied to branches to prevent them falling if hit. By 14:30, the situation is critical. The surrounded company is running low on ammunition. Casualties mount in the blistering heat. Many of the wounded have already died from blood loss and exposure. Puller takes a tremendous risk. He orders the destroyer USS Monson to fire directly on the Japanese positions. Danger close to the Marine lines. The 5-inch naval shells tear through the jungle canopy, shredding trees and men alike. Under the cover of this bombardment, the surviving Marines break through the Japanese lines and retreat to friendly territory. Of the 150 men who started the patrol, 24 are dead and 23 wounded. Captain Fuller is not among the survivors. According to eyewitness accounts, he was last seen providing covering fire for his retreating men, his Thompson submachine gun chattering until it fell silent. The battalion chaplain's report contains this entry. The men returning from the Guadalcanal patrol brought back stories that nightmares are made of. I spend my nights hearing their confessions. Some things they won't talk about at all. They just stare at the jungle and shake. That night, a Japanese force crosses the Guadalcanal and attacks the Marine perimeter. They are driven back, leaving 98 dead. The Marines lose 12 killed. It never stops, writes Private Eugene Sledge in his diary. They keep coming and coming. How many are there? How many more can there be? October 7th, 1942, Henderson Field, 0 to 11 hours. The night sky erupts with light as Japanese battleships Haruna and Congo open fire on the American positions. 14-inch naval shells, shells the size of men, scream overhead. The official record documents 973 shells fired during the bombardment. Each explosion throws a geyser of earth and shrapnel 50 feet into the air. The concussion is so powerful, it ruptures the eardrums of men in foxholes. Medical reports show 127 cases of hearing damage from this single bombardment. Private Sidney Phillips recalls, "The earth shook like Judgment Day had arrived. We couldn't hear anything but the roar of shells. Men were screaming, but you couldn't hear them. You could just see their mouths open in the flash of explosions." Direct hits destroy 48 of the 90 aircraft at Henderson Field. The main fuel depot goes up in a fireball that illuminates the entire island. Burning aviation fuel flows in streams through the American positions. Colonel Gerald Thomas, operations officer for the 1st Marine Division, writes in his report, "Men buried alive in their foxholes, men running in flames, men blown apart by direct hits. It was the closest thing to hell I've ever witnessed." The bombardment lasts for 80 minutes. When it ends, Henderson Field is a smoking ruin. The jungle around it is shredded. Trees snapped like matchsticks. The smell of cordite, burning fuel, and charred flesh hangs in the air. Dawn reveals the full extent of the destruction. The airfield is cratered beyond use. Nearly every aircraft is destroyed or damaged. Worst of all, the fuel reserves are gone. The few surviving planes have no gas to fly. And then comes the Japanese ground attack. At 06:30, thousands of soldiers under the command of General Masao Maruyama charged the American positions around the airfield. They've been ordered to take Henderson Field at any cost. The Marines meet them with everything they have left, which isn't much. Ammunition is running low. Many weapons are damaged from the bombardment. Men fight with whatever they can find. Sergeant John Bassilone's machine gun section becomes the centerpiece of the defense. When his guns overheat, Bassilone carries hot machine gun barrels with his bare hands, his skin sizzling on the metal. When ammunition runs out, he fights his way through Japanese lines to retrieve more. The fighting lasts all day. By nightfall, the Marines still hold their positions, but at terrible cost. The casualty reports show 53 Marines killed and over 200 wounded. Japanese losses are worse. Nearly 700 dead litter the approaches to the airfield. That night, another Japanese force attacks from a different direction. The cycle of violence continues without pause. Men who haven't slept in days hallucinate as they fight. "I saw dead men getting up and fighting again," Private Robert Leckie later wrote. "I saw demons coming out of the jungle, but I kept firing because the living Japanese looked just as unreal as the hallucinations." October 9, 1942. The Slot. The waters north of Guadalcanal, 1530 hours. Lieutenant Commander Robert Copeland stands on the bridge of the destroyer USS Nicholas. Through binoculars, he watches Japanese transport ships moving toward Guadalcanal, reinforcements and supplies for the Japanese forces on the island. The American task force, 5 destroyers and 4 cruisers under the command of Rear Admiral Norman Scott, moves to intercept. This will become the Battle of Cape Esperance. As night falls, the sea turns black. There is no moon. The ships run without lights, ghostly shapes cutting through the darkness. Radar, still a new technology, provides the only eyes. At 23:36, radar operator Timothy Murray reports contacts. Multiple vessels bearing 230, range 18,000 yards, speed 20 knots. Admiral Scott orders general quarters, battle stations. The American force turns to cross the Japanese T, a naval maneuver designed to bring all guns to bear while exposing the enemy to enfilading fire. At 23:46, USS Salt Lake City fires the first shots. The night erupts with the flash and thunder of naval guns. The sea boils with shell splashes. The Japanese are caught by surprise but recover quickly. Through the darkness, Japanese destroyer Fubuki charges the American line. Multiple 8-inch shells from USS San Francisco strike her simultaneously. According to survivors, the destroyer simply disintegrates, breaking in half and sinking with all hands. 196 sailors gone in seconds. Japanese cruiser Furutaka takes 90 shells in a concentrated broadside. Fires rage from stem to stern. Men leap from her burning decks into the oil-slicked water. American destroyer USS Duncan pushes too far into the Japanese formation. She's hit 58 times by Japanese shells. Her deck becomes a slaughterhouse. Of the 276 men aboard, 119 are killed or wounded. The survivors abandon ship at 0200. Duncan sinks shortly after, slipping beneath the waves while still firing her remaining operational gun. By dawn, the battle is over. The Japanese lose 1 cruiser and 1 destroyer sunk, with heavy damage to 2 more vessels. The Americans lose destroyer Duncan and suffer damage to cruiser Boise and destroyer Fahrenholt. The water is thick with debris and bodies. Sharks are drawn to the carnage. Rescue operations continue throughout the morning, but many wounded men disappear beneath the surface before boats can reach them. Lieutenant Frank Osborne, executive officer of USS Fahrenholt, writes in his report, "The sea took more men than the enemy shells. You'd hear someone shouting for help in the darkness, and by the time you got there, there'd be nothing but a spreading red stain on the water." On Guadalcanal, the Marines watched the distant flashes of naval gunfire illuminate the horizon. Their survival depends on who controls the sea around their island. Colonel Merritt Edson tells his men, "Every time you see those flashes, boys, that's the life or death struggle for this island happening right before your eyes." October 13, 1942. Marine defensive positions. 0700 hours. Major General Archie Vandegrift, commander of the 1st Marine Division, surveys his forces. The morning situation report on his desk tells a grim story. Of the original 18,000 Marines landed in August, less than 8,000 remain combat effective. Malaria has infected over 5,000 men. The medical logs show 1,960 cases so severe they're completely non-functional. Dysentery affects almost everyone to some degree. Tropical ulcers, fungal infections, and nutritional deficiencies have taken a further toll. According to Supply Officer Captain Edmund Stump's records, the men are surviving on 800 to 1,200 calories per day, 1/3 of what they need given their activity level. Food supplies are critical. There's no refrigeration. In the tropical heat, most rations spoil quickly. The smell of rotting meat permeates the American positions. Ammunition is also running low. Artillery units are down to 10 shells per gun per day. Machine gun teams count individual bullets. If the Japanese launch another major attack, the Marines might not have enough firepower to stop them. Vandegrift calls his staff together. Colonel Gerald Thomas, Colonel Merritt Edson, Colonel William McKelvey, and Colonel Pedro Del Valle gather in the makeshift command post, a former Japanese bunker reinforced with sandbags. "Gentlemen," Vandegrift says, "I won't sugarcoat this. We're in serious trouble." He outlines the situation. Japanese forces on the island now outnumber the Marines. Intelligence estimates 20,000 to 22,000 enemy troops, most of them fresh reinforcements. Intercepted radio messages indicate another major offensive is being planned. The discussion that follows is recorded in Colonel Thomas's diary. The question was raised, could we hold? Should we consider a fighting withdrawal to a more defensible perimeter? The silence that followed was answer enough. There is nowhere to withdraw to. We hold or we die. Vandegrift's decision is unequivocal. We stay. We fight. We hold until relieved. Orders go out to all units. Prepare for a major Japanese offensive within 48 hours. Conserve ammunition. Set extra booby traps. Sharpen bayonets. That afternoon, Coast Watcher Martin Clemens brings more intelligence. Japanese patrols have been observed cutting trails through the jungle south of the airfield, preparing routes for a major flanking attack. They're coming in force, Clemens reports. My natives say the jungle is full of Japanese. More than they've ever seen. That night, Chaplain Matthew Keogh conducts services for men who know they might not survive the coming battle. His diary entry reads, "Never have I seen men pray with such intensity. There are no atheists in foxholes on Guadalcanal tonight." As darkness falls, the ritual begins again. Japanese destroyers shell the Marine positions. Aircraft drop flares and bombs. Men crouch in foxholes half filled with fetid water, scratching at tropical sores that won't heal, watching the jungle for movement. The worst is yet to come. October 15th, 1942. Jungle, south of Henderson Field. Time unknown. Sergeant Manila John Basilone cannot tell what time it is. His watch stopped working weeks ago. The constant cloud cover makes it impossible to judge the time by the sun's position. It's sometime in the afternoon, he thinks. The rain has temporarily stopped, but water still drips from the jungle canopy. Basilone leads a 12-man patrol from the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines. They're probing south of the main defensive line, looking for signs of the Japanese buildup reported by natives. The men move silently through the undergrowth, using hand signals to communicate. They're all veterans now, the few who have survived months on Guadalcanal. Their uniforms are rotting off their bodies. Many wear captured Japanese boots because their own footwear disintegrated weeks ago. Every man is gaunt from malnutrition. Their skin has a yellowish tinge from malaria. They've learned to fight through the fevers. There's no other choice. The medical tents are already overflowing. At a small clearing, Basilone halts the patrol. Something isn't right. The jungle is too quiet. No bird calls. No insect sounds. Corporal Robert Standish takes point, moving forward cautiously. He freezes, then slowly backs away. He holds up 5 fingers, then 10, then spreads his hands wide, too many to count. Through the densest part of the jungle, a Japanese column is moving. Hundreds of soldiers, perhaps thousands, carrying mortars, machine guns, and artillery pieces broken down for transport. The Marines freeze, barely breathing. Discovery means certain death. They're too few to fight, too far from friendly lines to run. A Japanese officer stops less than 20 feet from their position. He consults a map, pointing and giving orders to his subordinates. Basilone can see the sweat stains on the officer's uniform, can hear the creak of his leather equipment. For 30 agonizing minutes, the Marines remain motionless as the Japanese column files past their position. According to Basilone's report, he estimated over 3,000 enemy troops moving toward Marine lines. When the last Japanese soldier disappears into the jungle, the patrol retreats carefully back to American lines. Their intelligence is critical. The Japanese are massing for a major attack from the south, exactly where the Marine lines are thinnest. Colonel Chesty Puller receives Bassilone's report. He immediately orders the 1st Battalion to prepare defensive positions facing south. Bassilone's machine gun section takes up the center of the line.
"They'll come tonight," Puller tells his officers. "Be ready for anything." As darkness falls, the waiting begins. The rain returns, a steady, tropical downpour that turns foxholes into swimming pools and reduces visibility to near zero. Lightning flashes illuminate the jungle in stark black and white snapshots. At 21:42, it begins. October 15, 1942. Lunga Perimeter, 21:42 hours. The Japanese attack begins with an artillery barrage. Shells crash through the jungle canopy, showering the Marines with deadly wooden splinters as they hit trees. The explosions are deafening. The ground trembles. Through the artillery fire comes the sound every Marine has learned to dread. A high-pitched, keening battle cry. "Banzai! Banzai! Banzai!" Thousands of Japanese soldiers charge the Marine lines. They come in human waves, officers leading with drawn swords. Many carry grenade bundles strapped to their bodies, human bombs, meant to clear barbed wire and strong points. The Marines open fire. Machine guns chatter, rifles crack, mortars thump. The Japanese fall by the dozens, by the hundreds, but still they come. Colonel Puller moves up and down the line, encouraging his men. "Pour it into them! Don't let up!" Sergeant Bassilone's machine gun section becomes the focal point of the defense. When one gun overheats, he switches to another. When ammunition runs low, he personally carries boxes of belted rounds through enemy fire. The official citation for his Medal of Honor reads, "While the enemy was hammering at the Marines' defensive positions, Sergeant Bassilone, in charge of 2 sections of heavy machine guns, fought valiantly to check the savage and determined assault." What the citation doesn't capture is the horror of that night. Private Thomas Phillips later described it in an interview. "The Japanese kept coming through the rain. We'd mow them down and more would appear. They were climbing over piles of their own dead to get at us. The water in our foxholes turned red. You couldn't hear anything over the shooting and screaming." At midnight, Japanese soldiers breach the Marine lines. The fighting becomes hand-to-hand. Men stab each other with bayonets in the darkness. They club each other with rifle butts and entrenching tools. They throttle each other in the mud. Lieutenant Colonel Lewis Puller is everywhere, pistol in hand, rallying his men. When ammunition for one of Bassilone's machine guns runs out, Puller personally leads a counterattack to retrieve more from the supply depot. By 0400, the Japanese attack begins to falter. The rain has stopped. The eastern sky shows the first hint of dawn. The ground between the foxholes is carpeted with bodies. According to official counts, over 1,400 Japanese soldiers died in that single night attack. The Marines lost 40 killed and 103 wounded. They held. Dawn reveals the cost. The battlefield is a slaughterhouse. Bodies lie 3 and 4 deep in places. Streams run red with blood. The humidity and heat accelerate decomposition. The stench becomes unbearable within hours. Burial teams work continuously for 2 days. They can't dig individual graves. There are too many bodies. They use bulldozers to scrape out mass graves. Japanese soldiers are buried where they fell. Thousands of them pushed into anonymous pits. And still, it isn't over. October 24, 1942, Henderson Field, 1400 hours. Marine fighter pilot Captain Joe Foss climbs into his F-4F Wildcat. The aircraft is a patchwork of repairs, bullet holes plugged with metal from ration cans, instruments borrowed from crashed planes. But it flies, and that's all that matters. Mechanics have scavenged enough aviation fuel for one major operation. Intelligence reports a large Japanese air raid approaching, bomber formation with fighter escort. If they destroy Henderson Field now, after all the sacrifices made to hold it, the entire Guadalcanal campaign could be lost.
Major John L. Smith briefs his pilots. "This is it, gentlemen. Everything we've got goes up. Make every bullet count." At 14:27, the radar operator reports contacts. Multiple Japanese aircraft inbound. The remaining operational Wildcats, only 12 of them, scramble to intercept. As they climb to altitude, Captain Foss sees them. A formation of 16 Betty bombers escorted by 32 Zero fighters. The Marines are outnumbered nearly 4-1. What follows is recorded in the squadron's combat report as one of the most one-sided aerial victories of the Pacific War. The Marine pilots attack with a ferocity born of desperation. They dive through the Japanese formation, guns blazing. Captain Foss shoots down 5 aircraft in less than 6 minutes. His guns jam after the 5th kill. Rather than return to base, he continues to make dummy attacks, drawing Japanese fighters away from his squadmates. By the end of the engagement, the Marines have destroyed 22 Japanese aircraft while losing only one of their own, Lieutenant William May, who bails out and is later rescued. The cost to the Japanese is more than just aircraft. The loss of experienced pilots is irreplaceable. According to Japanese naval records recovered after the war, October 24th marked a turning point in air operations over Guadalcanal from which Japanese naval aviation never recovered. On the ground, Marines watched the aerial battle unfold above them. Private Eugene Sledge later wrote, "We cheered ourselves hoarse as burning Japanese planes spiraled down into the sea. It was the first good news we'd had in weeks." That evening, something unprecedented happens. No Japanese destroyers appear to shell Henderson Field. For the first time in weeks, the Marines might get a full night's sleep. Colonel Gerald Thomas writes in his report, "The change in morale was immediate and profound. Men who had been on the verge of collapse suddenly found new reserves of strength. It's amazing what the prospect of a night without bombardment can do for fighting men. But as the Marines will soon learn, this respite is only temporary. The struggle for Guadalcanal is far from over." November 1st, 1942, Marine Foxhole, Southern Perimeter. 200 hours. Private Clifford Quackenbush hasn't slept in 3 days. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees the face of the Japanese soldier he killed in hand-to-hand combat last week. A young man, hardly more than a boy, whose throat he cut with his K-bar knife when they grappled in the mud. The foxhole is half filled with brackish water. Quackenbush sits in it anyway. It's marginally cooler than the humid air. His skin is covered in tropical ulcers, dollar-sized eruptions that refuse to heal in the jungle conditions. The battalion surgeon, Lieutenant Patrick Sullivan, has warned that without proper treatment, gangrene will set in. But there is no proper treatment on Guadalcanal. The field hospitals are overwhelmed. Quackenbush has seen the medical tents, rows of stretchers filled with men screaming from wounds, from malaria fevers, from sheer psychological breakdown. The smell of gangrene, urine, and feces is overwhelming. The flies are so thick they form a living carpet over everything. According to the medical reports for early November, over 21% of the Marine force is completely incapacitated by disease or wounds. The rest fight on despite their ailments. Quackenbush shares his foxhole with Corporal Dean Winters. They take turns on watch. 2 hours on, 2 hours off. Winters is shivering despite the tropical heat. Malaria. The medicine, atabrine, ran out weeks ago. Now they just endure the cycles of fever and chills. A sound from the jungle. Metal on metal. Winters stiffens, raising his rifle. Both men peer into the darkness, straining to see movement. "Hear that?" Winters whispers. Quackenbush nods. They've learned to distinguish between jungle sounds and human activity. This is definitely human. Japanese soldiers using their helmets to communicate in the darkness. The official Marine report for November 1 notes,
Enemy infiltration attempts continue nightly. Small parties probe our lines, looking for weak points. Recommend extra vigilance between 0100 and 0400 hours when these activities are most frequent. What the report doesn't capture is the psychological effect of this constant probing. The Marines never know when a small infiltration party might be the vanguard of another major assault. Every night, sound becomes a potential threat. Sleep is impossible. Winters in Quackenbush spend the next 4 hours in tense silence. Weapons ready, jumping at every sound. No attack materializes. As dawn approaches, they relax slightly. Then Winters whispers, "Look." 20 yards from their position, half hidden in the undergrowth, are 3 Japanese soldiers watching the Marine lines.
They're so perfectly camouflaged that they're almost invisible. Just pairs of eyes in the foliage. Quackenbush raises his rifle slowly. Winters does the same. They fire simultaneously. 2 of the Japanese fall immediately. The third returns fire before being cut down by a burst from a nearby Marine position. The jungle falls silent again. Another night on Guadalcanal. Another small skirmish that will never be recorded in the official histories. Another 3 bodies added to the thousands already rotting in the tropical soil. When does it end? Winters asks, his voice hollow with exhaustion. Quackenbush has no answer. November 12th, 1942. Ironbottom Sound, 0130 hours. The waters north of Guadalcanal have earned a new name among sailors, Ironbottom Sound. So many ships have been sunk here that the seafloor is littered with their steel hulks. According to naval records, by mid-November, 24 major warships, American and Japanese, rest in these waters, along with dozens of smaller vessels and aircraft. Tonight, more will join them. Rear Admiral Daniel J. Callahan commands a task force of 5 cruisers and 8 destroyers. Their mission? Intercept a Japanese force approaching Guadalcanal. 2 battleships, 1 cruiser, and 14 destroyers, under the command of Vice Admiral Hiroaki Abe. The Japanese mission is clear. Bombard Henderson Field into oblivion and land 11,000 fresh troops to overwhelm the American defenders once and for all. The 2 forces meet in the darkness. The night is moonless. Radar provides the only warning. At 1:24, the radar operator aboard USS Helena reports, large surface contacts bearing 310, range 27,000 yards. Admiral Callahan orders his ships to battle stations. The American formation is in disarray. Ships struggle to maintain position in the pitch darkness. When the range closes to 3,000 yards, point-blank range for naval combat, Callahan gives the order, odd ships fire to starboard, even ships fire to port. What follows is the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal, one of the most chaotic and brutal surface engagements in maritime history. Ships fire at muzzle flashes in the darkness. Some vessels are hit by friendly fire. The battle space becomes a swirling melee of burning ships, tracers, and searchlights. Japanese battleship Hiei brings her 14-inch guns to bear on cruiser USS San Francisco. The shells tear through the American vessel, killing everyone on the bridge, including Admiral Callahan. The official casualty report lists 77 killed and 105 wounded aboard San Francisco in the first 3 minutes of the engagement. Destroyer USS Laffey charges directly at battleship Hiei. For 7 minutes, the tiny destroyer fires every weapon at the Japanese behemoth. The battleship's secondary batteries return fire, transforming Laffey into a floating inferno. At 1:56, Laffey's magazines explode. The ship disappears in a ball of flame, taking 59 of her crew with her. The American ships fight with suicidal courage. Destroyer USS Sterett rams Japanese destroyer Udachi, then finishes her with gunfire. Cruiser USS Atlanta is hit by over 50 shells and a torpedo. She loses all power and drifts, burning until morning. By dawn,
the sea is littered with burning and sinking ships. The Americans have lost cruisers Atlanta and Juno, and destroyers Cushing, Laffey, Barton, and Monson. Over 1,400 American sailors are dead. The Japanese have lost battleship Hiei, the first Japanese battleship sunk in the war, and 2 destroyers. The official naval report calls the battle a tactical defeat but a strategic victory. The Japanese bombardment mission is thwarted. Henderson Field remains operational. Aboard USS Portland, badly damaged but still afloat, Lieutenant Commander Bruce McCandless writes in his log, "The cost is beyond calculation. But Guadalcanal stands. Our Marines still hold the island." For the men on Guadalcanal, the naval battle represents something they've had precious little of: hope. The Navy has not abandoned them. The fight goes on. November 21, 1942, Japanese headquarters, Mount Austin. Time unknown. Lieutenant General Harukichi Hyakutake, commander of all Japanese forces on Guadalcanal, studies the casualty reports. The numbers are catastrophic. According to recovered Japanese documents, by late November, over 21,000 Japanese soldiers have died on Guadalcanal. Not all from combat. Malaria, dysentery, and starvation have claimed thousands. The Japanese supply situation is even worse than the American one. Hyakutake's aide, Major Takeo Yamaguchi, presents the daily report. "Sir, 38th Division reports 311 men incapacitated by disease in the last 24 hours.
The 2nd Division has consumed the last of its rice rations. Men are eating roots and leaves. Some units report incidents of cannibalism. This last detail is confirmed by multiple sources. Japanese diary entries recovered from dead soldiers describe men cutting flesh from dead comrades, and in some cases, from the wounded, who cannot defend themselves." Major General Kiyotake Kawaguchi's operational diary, captured later, contains this entry from November 22. The situation grows desperate. "Walking through the camps, I see living skeletons, not soldiers. Men too weak to stand. Men with the 1,000-yard stare of those who have seen too much horror. And the jungle consumes us all." The Japanese soldiers have a name for Guadalcanal: Starvation Island, Gatoshima. In their diaries, they describe it as the Island of Death and the Island of Devils. A Japanese medical report from November 20th notes, "Disease progresses rapidly in jungle conditions. Wounds that would be minor elsewhere become fatal here. Gangrene sets in within hours. Tropical ulcers expand to expose bone. Men die screaming from infections we cannot treat for lack of medications." By late November, according to Japanese records, their forces on Guadalcanal are receiving less than 10% of the supplies they need. American air and naval control has tightened the noose around the island. Lieutenant General Hyakutake makes the decision that will save thousands of his men, but concede the island to the Americans. A fighting withdrawal. The order goes out to all units on November 23rd. Prepare for a phased withdrawal to New Georgia. Priority evacuation for specialists and leadership personnel. All others will conduct delaying actions while withdrawal proceeds. What the order doesn't say, but what every Japanese officer understands, is that most of their men will never leave Guadalcanal. There aren't enough ships, enough planes, enough time to evacuate everyone. Thousands will be left behind to fight to the death, buying time with their lives. As one Japanese officer wrote in his diary, "We came to this island to die for the emperor. It seems we will fulfill that duty after all." December 7, 1942, Henderson Field, 10 o'clock hours. 1 year after Pearl Harbor, Major General Alexander Vandegrift addresses the men of the 1st Marine Division. They stand in formation on the airstrip, or what's left of them. Of the 18,000 Marines who landed in August, fewer than 8,000 remain combat effective. The rest are dead, evacuated with wounds, or incapacitated by disease.
According to the official medical reports, by early December, the 1st Marine Division has suffered 650 men killed in action and 31 missing, presumed dead. But the disease casualties are far higher. 8,580 men have been incapacitated by malaria, dysentery, dengue fever, and tropical infections. The faces staring back at Vandegrift are gaunt, yellowish from malaria, aged beyond their years. Every man has lost at least 20 pounds. Their uniforms hang on them like sacks. Many wear a patchwork of Marine and Japanese clothing, whatever has survived the jungle conditions. Men of the 1st Marine Division, Vandegrift begins, his voice carrying across the airfield. You have done what no one thought possible. You have held this island against everything the enemy could throw at you. And now, I can tell you that your long ordeal is coming to an end. A murmur runs through the ranks. Rumors have been circulating for days. Replacements coming, the division being relieved. But after months of broken promises, few believe anything until they see it with their own eyes. The Army's Americal Division has begun landing, Vandegrift continues. Within 2 weeks, they will take over our positions. The 1st Marine Division is being withdrawn to Australia for rest, recovery, and refit. The announcement is met with stunned silence, then scattered cheers that build to a roar.
Men who haven't shown emotion in months weep openly. They've survived. They're going home, or at least away from this island of death. Private Eugene Sledge later wrote, "We couldn't believe it was real. After so long living in a waking nightmare, the idea that we might walk away from Guadalcanal alive seemed impossible. Many of us were sure we'd die on that island." As the Marines disperse, Naval Intelligence Officer Lieutenant Commander James Stewart delivers the latest reports to Vandegrift. Japanese radio traffic has increased dramatically. Their forces appear to be consolidating positions on the western end of the island, preparing for evacuation. They're giving up, Stewart says, disbelief in his voice. Vandegrift shakes his head. Not giving up, making a strategic withdrawal. There's a difference. They know they can't win here anymore. Too many losses, too little supply. But they'll be back, somewhere else. The Battle of Guadalcanal isn't over, not officially. That won't come until February 9th, 1943, when the last Japanese forces are evacuated. But for the men of the 1st Marine Division, their part in the horror is ending. As they wait for transportation ships, the Marines watch Army troops arriving. Fresh-faced, well-fed men with new equipment. Many veterans try to warn the newcomers about what they're facing. This place will kill you if you let it, Sergeant John Bassalone tells a young Army lieutenant. It's not just the Japanese. It's the island itself. It hates us. All of us. The lieutenant laughs nervously, not understanding. He will, soon enough. December 20th, 1942, USS President Hayes. Time unknown. The troop transport steams away from Guadalcanal, carrying the first contingent of the 1st Marine Division to Australia. On deck, Marines stand silently, watching the island recede in the distance. The jungle-covered mountains, wreathed in clouds, grow smaller until they're just a dark smudge on the horizon. Private Robert Leckie writes in his journal, "None of us spoke as Guadalcanal disappeared. What was there to say? That place had taken something from each of us that we would never get back. We left pieces of ourselves in that jungle, and not just our dead." Below decks, the ship's medical staff treats the walking wounded. According to the transport manifest, every man from Guadalcanal requires medical attention of some kind. Tropical ulcers, fungal infections, malaria, dengue fever, dysentery, malnutrition. The list of ailments is endless. Navy physician Lieutenant Walter Briggs writes in his report, "I have never seen men in worse physical condition who were still ambulatory. Many have lost 25 to 30% of their body weight. Vitamin deficiencies have caused night blindness, scurvy-like symptoms, and neurological problems. Recovery will take months, perhaps years for some.
The psychological wounds are less visible, but equally severe. Combat fatigue, what will later be called PTSD, affects almost everyone to some degree. Nightmares, flashbacks, uncontrollable shaking, and thousand-yard stares are common. Chaplain Michael O'Connor notes in his log, "Many men refuse to talk about their experiences. Others can't stop talking about them. The same stories, over and over. As if by repetition they might make sense of the senseless. They all jump at loud noises. None of them sleep through the night." In the ship's sickbay, pharmacist's mate Second Class John Bradley treats a Marine with tropical ulcers that have eaten through to the bone. As he cleans the wounds, the Marine asks, "Will people back home understand what it was like? Will they ever know what we went through?" Bradley has no answer. How could anyone who wasn't there understand the horror of Guadalcanal? The constant fear, the stench of death, the sound of wounded men screaming in the night, the sight of jungle rot eating away living flesh.
The knowledge that you're trapped on an island where everything, the enemy, the environment, disease, starvation, is trying to kill you. Captain Regan Fuller, in his final report before being evacuated with malaria, wrote, "Guadalcanal wasn't just a battle. It was a descent into a primordial nightmare. The line between civilization and savagery, already thin in warfare, disappeared completely in that jungle. Men became beasts, fighting for survival. The only difference between us and the Japanese was that we won." As USS President Hayes steams toward Australia, the men of the 1st Marine Division begin the long process of healing, physically and mentally. Many never will, not completely. The nightmares will continue for decades. The jungle will always be with them. In the ship's log, the entry for December 20th reads simply, "Embarked elements of 1st Marine Division ex-Guadalcanal, proceeding to Brisbane, Australia. Weather fair, seas moderate." Nothing about the cargo of shattered men the ship carries. Nothing about the island of death, now disappearing over the horizon. Some things cannot be captured in official reports. January 15, 1943. Japanese evacuation point, Cape Esperance. 200 hours. Under the cover of darkness, Japanese destroyers approach the northwestern coast of Guadalcanal. Their mission? Evacuate as many soldiers as possible. According to Japanese naval records, this is the 6th such evacuation run since December 28th. Waiting in the jungle are the remnants of what was once a powerful Japanese force. Now they are shadows, walking skeletons ravaged by starvation and disease. Medical officer Toshikazu Mito's diary, recovered later, describes their condition. "Many cannot walk without assistance. Tropical ulcers have eaten to the bone. Men have lost 20 to 30 kilograms. They resemble living corpses more than soldiers." The evacuation process is desperate and chaotic. Small boats ferry men from shore to the waiting destroyers. Priority is given to officers, specialists, and men who can still fight. The rest are left behind. Lieutenant Hiru Nakamura writes in his diary, "The worst task is choosing who goes and who stays. Men beg to be taken. Some try to swim to the boats and drown. Others simply sit on the beach, too weak or too resigned to move. I will remember their eyes until I die." The Japanese have a name for these evacuation runs: rat transportation, Nezumi Yuso. By early February, they will have evacuated approximately 10,600 men, less than half of the force originally on the island. The rest are dead or abandoned to their fate. Aboard destroyer Kagero, Captain Shigeru Matsuda observes the loading process through binoculars. In his report, he notes, "The men coming aboard barely resemble human beings. They are walking ghosts. Many collapse once they reach the deck. Our medical staff is overwhelmed. The smell is indescribable. Gangrenous wounds, dysentery, bodies unwashed for months." As dawn approaches, the evacuation must end.
Japanese naval doctrine forbids destroyers from operating within range of American aircraft after daylight. The last boats return to the destroyers. Hundreds of men remain on the beach, watching their last hope of escape disappear over the horizon. Among those left behind is Lieutenant Masaru Tanaka. His final diary entry, found months later beside his remains, reads, "I am resigned to my fate. We came to this island for the glory of the Emperor. We found only suffering and death. May those who come after us learn from our sacrifice. Guadalcanal is not worth the price we paid." The Japanese High Command has made its decision. Guadalcanal will be abandoned. The formal order comes on January 4, 1943. All forces will withdraw from Guadalcanal by February 9.
Operation KE will proceed according to schedule. It is a stunning admission of defeat for an army that has never known major failure in the modern era. The decision to withdraw from Guadalcanal marks the first strategic Japanese defeat of World War II, and the beginning of their long retreat across the Pacific. For the men left behind on Guadalcanal, the order means nothing. They will never see it. They will die in the jungle, fighting to the last or succumbing to disease and starvation. Their bones will bleach in the tropical sun, unmarked and unmourned except by their comrades, who remember the horror of Starvation Island. February 9, 1943. American outpost, Western Guadalcanal. 11 hours. Sergeant Thomas Mullins of the Americal Division leads a patrol through the jungle west of the Meticulously River. Intelligence reports indicate the Japanese are gone, evacuated in Operation KE over the past month. But no one is taking chances. Too many men have died on this island to risk carelessness now. The patrol moves cautiously through the undergrowth. The men are tense, weapons ready. Despite the reports, it's hard to believe the Japanese would simply leave after fighting so desperately for 6 months. According to the patrol log, at 11:27, they discover the first abandoned Japanese position, a network of bunkers and foxholes on a ridge overlooking the coast. The position is deserted. Equipment lies scattered about, helmets, rifles, even personal items like photographs and letters. The Japanese left in a hurry. "Check everything for booby traps," Mullins orders. The Japanese are known for rigging explosives in abandoned positions. In a command bunker, they find the body of a Japanese officer. He has committed suicide rather than surrender or retreat. His sword lies across his lap. A photograph of a woman and child, presumably his family, is positioned carefully beside him. According to the patrol report, his uniform insignia identifies him as Lieutenant Colonel Takashi Watanabe, commander of the 3rd Battalion, 228th Infantry Regiment. The patrol continues westward. They find more abandoned positions, more equipment, more dead. Japanese soldiers too wounded or sick to be evacuated, left behind to die. Some show signs of having been dead for weeks. Others are more recent. At 13:45, they reach Cape Esperance, the westernmost point of Guadalcanal. Here they find the main evacuation beach. According to the report, the scene is apocalyptic. Hundreds of Japanese bodies line the shore. Men who died waiting for evacuation that never came. Equipment is piled in heaps, some of it burned to deny it to the Americans. Medical supplies, ammunition, even food rations, all destroyed in the Japanese retreat. Most disturbing are the hospital areas. Makeshift bamboo shelters contain the remains of wounded men who couldn't be moved. Medical Officer Lieutenant James Wilson's report describes the scene. Multiple casualties with advanced gangrene, tropical ulcers, and evidence of severe malnutrition. Many appear to have been abandoned alive and died of dehydration. Others show evidence of suicide or mercy killing. The conditions these men endured in their final days defy description. By 1600, the patrol has confirmed what intelligence already suspected. The Japanese have completely evacuated Guadalcanal. The battle that began on August 7, 1942, is finally over. Sergeant Mullins takes a final look at Cape Esperance before ordering his men to return to base. In his personal diary, he writes, "Standing on that beach, surrounded by the dead, I tried to make sense of it all. What was gained? What was lost? Thousands dead on both sides. An island of jungle and volcanic rock exchanged for rivers of blood. History will record it as a victory. For those who fought here, it will always be something else. A glimpse into the darkest heart of warfare. The official record declares the Guadalcanal campaign a significant American victory. The Japanese advance in the South Pacific is halted. The strategic initiative passes to the Allies. But numbers tell a different story about the cost. Official American casualties: 1,592 killed in action, 4,183 wounded, 2,952 incapacitated by disease. Estimated Japanese casualties: 24,000 to 26,000 dead from all causes. August 7, 2023. Guadalcanal, 900 hours. 81 years after the first Marines landed on Guadalcanal, Peter Coleman walks the beaches of what was once called Red Beach. He's a historian, here to document what remains of one of the most brutal battles of World War II. The island has changed. Nature has reclaimed much of the battlefield. Henderson Field is now Honiara International Airport, serving the capital city of the Solomon Islands. The jungle has grown over foxholes and bunkers. Rusted artillery pieces sit as monuments where once they fired in anger. But ghosts remain. Local guides show Coleman the sites where the heaviest fighting occurred. Bloody Ridge, where Edson's raiders held against overwhelming odds. The Tenarue River, where the Japanese suffered their first major defeat. The slopes of Mount Austin, where men fought and died in anonymity. The old people say the island is haunted, explained Solomon, Coleman's guide. At night, they hear whispers in the jungle. They see lights where no lights should be. They feel the presence of those who died here. Archaeological teams still find remains, Japanese and American, 8 decades after the battle. Dog tags, weapons, bones. The island hasn't finished revealing its secrets. In the small museum in Honiara, Coleman examines artifacts recovered from the battlefield. Canteens eaten by rust. Helmets punctured by bullets. Letters that never reached home. Personal effects that were once treasured by men who died far from everything they knew and loved. A Japanese diary, translated and displayed behind glass, contains this entry from December 1942. This island is hell. We die slowly, day by day. The jungle consumes us. The Americans kill us. Disease weakens us. If anyone reads these words after I am gone, know that we suffered here beyond human endurance. Outside, the tropical sun beats down, just as it did in 1942. The humidity is oppressive. Mosquitoes whine incessantly. In the distance, thunder rumbles over Ironbottom Sound, named for the dozens of ships that still lie on the seafloor, war graves for thousands of sailors. Coleman walks to the American Memorial on Skyline Ridge, overlooking what was once Henderson Field. The memorial is simple, a granite obelisk with an inscription. In memory of the United States Marines and sailors who gave their lives for their country during the Battle for Guadalcanal, August 7, 1942, February 9, 1943. No grand statements, no declarations of glory or victory, just an acknowledgement of sacrifice. As the sun sets over Ironbottom Sound, the jungle comes alive with sounds. Insects, birds, the rustle of vegetation in the breeze. In the gathering darkness,
it's easy to imagine other sounds beneath these natural ones. The clang of equipment, the whisper of orders, the muted suffering of men fighting not just an enemy, but the island itself. Guadalcanal has moved on. The people here live their lives, build their futures, without dwelling on the horror that once consumed their island. But the memories remain, preserved in diaries, reports, and the nightmares of the few survivors still living. The Battle of Guadalcanal ended nearly 8 decades ago.
For those who fought there, it never truly ended at all. Thank you for listening. If you are also proud of the bravery of our soldiers, subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on new historical stories.